The first thing Darius Cole noticed wasn't the judge's voice. It was the sound of his own pulse. Thick, stubborn, pounding in his ears like bass from a car 2 lanes over. He sat at the defense table inside the Fulton County Courthouse in downtown Atlanta, suit collar suddenly too tight, palms slick, knee bouncing like it had a mind of its own. Around him, the courtroom breathed in small noises, paper shuffling, a cough swallowed fast, the faint squeak of dress shoes crossing polished wood. Darius forced a swallow and stared at the seal behind the bench like it could turn into a doorway. He wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't his life. He was a project manager at a fast-growing fintech company, the guy people called Solid, the man who always brought cupcakes for birthdays and helped elderly neighbors carry groceries. But Solid didn't matter when a police report had your name on it. His attorney, Avery Grant, leaned in close and spoke softly. "Remember what I told you. Keep your face calm. Don't react to anything the prosecution says. And whatever happens, whatever, you don't speak unless I tell you." Darius nodded, because nodding was easier than thinking. Across the aisle, the prosecutor arranged her files with surgical precision. Detective Alana Price sat behind her, expression unreadable, a woman who didn't look like she ever lost sleep. On the first row of benches, Darius's mother, Loretta, clasped a handkerchief tight enough to wrinkle it into a rope. And then there was the empty seat that should have been filled. Simone hadn't come. Not to see him, not to condemn him, not to forgive him. That absence weighed more than the charges. The bailiff called the room to order. Everyone rose. Darius rose too, body stiff as old wood. The side door behind the bench opened, and the judge entered, black robe flowing like a shadow with purpose. Darius kept his eyes lowered, the way Avery told him. Still, he felt the presence at the center of the room like a storm you can smell before it hits. The judge sat. The gavel tapped once. Small sound, huge meaning. "All rise," the clerk repeated. Darius stood, chest tight, throat dry. He didn't know it yet, but the love he'd taken for granted, the love he'd bruised with his temper and his pride, was about to come back wearing a robe. And judgment wasn't always loud. Sometimes it arrived calm. Sometimes it arrived prepared. Sometimes it arrived smiling politely, as if it had been waiting all along. 3 weeks earlier, the Coles looked like a billboard for black excellence when they stepped into the Wren rooftop on Peachtree Street. Simone Cole moved like confidence. Sleek dress, soft curls pinned back, gold hoops catching the city lights. Darius walked beside her with the steady swagger of a man who believed he'd built the life they were living. Their friends clapped them on the back, sliding them into a reserved section where a neon sign pulsed above a table full of champagne flutes. "Darius, my guy," Kenny Banks boomed, gripping his hand. Kenny wore designer sneakers and the grin of someone who never met a risk he didn't like. "I heard your company's about to IPO. You got that stock package, don't you?" Darius laughed. "You already counting my money?" "Not counting," Kenny corrected. "Planning. You and Simone could be out here buying rental properties, running your own fund, living that generational wealth life. We're talking real estate. We're talking credit stacking. We're talking big boy moves." Simone smiled politely, but her eyes stayed cautious, like she was measuring the room and everyone in it. Darius always said she overthought things. Simone called it survival. "You ever notice," Kenny continued, leaning in, "the couples who get ahead are the ones who stop playing small? Life insurance, trusts, assets. You can't just be in love. You gotta be protected." Simone's fingers tightened around her glass. "Protected from what?" Kenny's grin softened. "From life, sis. From surprises." Darius brushed it off with a chuckle, the way he brushed off most warnings. "We're fine. We got savings. We got a plan." But that word, plan, had been floating between them lately like smoke. Simone wanted a different plan, a slower plan, a safer plan. Darius wanted acceleration, more money, more status, more proof. Later that night, on the ride down the elevator, Simone's smile faded, like the music stopping. "Why do you act like everything is a race?" she asked. Darius stared at the glowing floor numbers. "Because it is. Atlanta don't wait on nobody." She studied him. "And what about me? Do I get to set the pace?" The doors opened. The cool air outside hit them both. Darius didn't answer right away. He told himself he didn't answer because he was tired, because he had pressure at work, because Kenny was in his ear with big dreams, but the truth was uglier and smaller. Darius didn't answer because Simone's question scared him, and when fear sits too long in a man's chest, it can curdle into something sharp. Monday morning brought fluorescent lighting and ambition. Darius walked into Horizon Pay's headquarters. Glass walls, minimalist furniture, motivational slogans that felt like threats. He was good at his job, good enough that leadership had started calling him family. In corporate language, family usually meant, we need you to sacrifice without complaining. His boss, Brent Caldwell, waved him into a conference room with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Brent was polished, southern, the kind of man who used first names like weapons. Cole, Brent said, tapping a spreadsheet on the screen. We've got an investor presentation in 10 days. I need you airtight. No mistakes. You're the face of execution. Darius scanned the numbers. His stomach dipped. These projections are aggressive. Brent's smile sharpened. Aggressive sells. It also collapses, Darius muttered. Brent leaned closer. Listen, you want that promotion or not? You want that equity package or not? You told me you're building something for your family. The word family landed like a hook. Darius nodded, because nodding was easier than fighting. By the time he left the office, his head buzzed with deadlines and expectations. His phone lit up with a text from Simone. Can we talk tonight? It's important. Darius stared at the message longer than he should have. Important had become Simone's favorite word lately. Important meant feelings, boundaries, and choices. Darius didn't have room for choices. He had room for tasks. He typed back, long day, later. At lunch, Kenny called, voice loud enough to vibrate through the speaker. You ready for that duplex walkthrough? I got a lender lined up. Easy approval. We'll leverage your income, stack your credit, get you in the door. Darius lowered his voice. Simone's not feeling the real estate thing. Kenny laughed like that was cute. Bro, women love security. You show her a deed, she'll calm down. Darius didn't correct him. He wanted to believe it. He wanted a solution that didn't require listening. That evening, traffic thickened on the downtown connector, brake lights stretching like a red river. Darius gripped the steering wheel, jaw tight, replaying Brent's pressure, Kenny's excitement, Simone's important. By the time he pulled into their building in Midtown, high-rise with key fobs and a concierge who always smiled, Darius already felt like he was walking into a fight. The elevator music played something gentle. Darius hated how gentle it was. It made him feel like the villain in his own home. Their condo was clean in the way Simone kept it when her mind was trying to stay organized. A candle flickered on the kitchen island. A pot of rice simmered. The TV was off. That last part told Darius everything. Simone stood by the window, looking down at the city lights like she was deciding whether to trust them. You're home, she said, not turning around. Yeah, Darius answered, shrugging off his jacket. What's so important? Simone took a breath, slow and deliberate. She turned and held out a folder. Darius frowned. What's that? A lease, she said. Not for us. For me. The room didn't move, but Darius felt like the floor tilted. What? I'm not leaving you, Simone added quickly, voice trembling at the edges. I'm stepping away. Temporarily. I need space. Darius stared at her as if she'd spoken another language. Space for what? You got a man? Simone's eyes flashed. Don't insult me. Then why you got a lease? Because I don't recognize you anymore, she said, words spilling faster now. Because every conversation turns into you winning. Because I'm always bracing for your mood. Darius scoffed. You acting like I'm some monster. Simone's voice softened, and that softness hurt worse than anger. I'm acting like I'm tired. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. So what? You just gonna dip when life gets hard? I'm not dipping. I'm protecting my peace. Darius's phone buzzed on the counter. Brent asking for revised slides. Kenny sending a picture of a building with, "This is the one," typed in all caps. Darius glanced at the screen, then back at Simone. He felt trapped between demands, between identities, between being the man and being a husband. Simone reached for his hand gently. I still love you, Darius, but love shouldn't feel like walking through broken glass. That touch, soft, careful, should have calmed him. Instead, it embarrassed him, because it made him feel seen, because it made him feel like the problem. He snatched his hand back. So you got this all planned, huh? You been plotting behind my back? Simone flinched. I've been thinking. For months. Months. Darius's pride rose like fire. You really think you can just... He stepped closer. His voice got louder. Simone backed up instinctively. And in that small movement, her body anticipating him, Darius saw something that made him furious. Fear, not of the world, of him. His hand lifted before his mind finished deciding. Not a punch, not a blow that would leave bruises in a headline, but raised, threatening, a line crossed. Simone's eyes widened, not surprised, just confirmed. And in that instant, Darius did not realize he had just turned love into evidence. The knock came hard and fast. Darius froze, hands still hovering in the air like a mistake caught on camera. Simone stood still too, breathing shallow, eyes locked on his as if she needed to memorize the man he was becoming. Another knock, louder. "Simone, everything okay in there?" A woman's voice called through the door. Miss Laverne Whitfield, their neighbor, the retired nurse with the sharp tongue and soft heart. The woman who gave Simone peppermint tea when her cramps were bad and gave Darius side-eye when his temper showed. Simone blinked, as if waking. She moved past Darius without touching him and opened the door a crack. Miss Laverne took one look at Simone's face and pushed the door wider. Her gaze shot to Darius's raised hand. "Oh," she said, voice dropping cold. "So this what we doing now?" "It's not like that," Darius started. Miss Laverne didn't give him the dignity of listening. She stepped in like she owned the air. "Simone, baby, you all right?" Simone nodded too quickly. "I'm fine." Miss Laverne turned back to Darius, eyes hard. "Put your hand down." Darius's hand lowered slowly like a guilty child caught stealing. "You need to leave," Simone whispered, voice cracking. Not to Miss Laverne, to Darius. Darius stared at his wife, and for the first time he understood that he had not just scared her, he had changed something in her that might not change back. "I didn't hit you," he said, as if that was the only sin available. "I didn't." Simone's laugh was small and broken. "You didn't have to." Miss Laverne pulled out her phone. "You want me to call somebody, Simone?" Simone hesitated. Darius saw the war in her face. Love versus reality. Habit versus safety. Then she said, barely audible, "Yes." Darius's stomach dropped. "Simone, don't do that." Miss Laverne stepped between them. She already did. She chose herself. Within minutes, 2 Atlanta police officers arrived, professional, calm, eyes scanning everything. One spoke to Simone in the bedroom with Miss Laverne beside her. The other asked Darius to sit at the kitchen island, like this was an interview and not the collapse of a marriage. "Sir," the officer said, "did you raise your hand at your wife?" Darius swallowed. I got angry, but I didn't touch her." "Angry," the officer repeated, writing. "Did she fear you would?" Darius looked toward the bedroom door. The candle on the counter still flickered, like it didn't know it was in a crime scene. He heard Simone's voice muffled, trembling but firm. "Yes," she said. "I feared him." And that single word, feared, turned a moment into a case. News didn't explode. It seeped. By morning, Darius's phone held a dozen missed calls and a dozen more texts that all sounded the same. "Bro, what happened? You okay? Call me ASAP." He sat in his car outside a coffee shop he didn't even remember driving to. The steam from his cup fogged the windshield, while the world kept moving around him like he was invisible. Avery Grant called first. "You've been charged," she said, voice calm but urgent. "It's not just about contact. It's about intimidation." And Simone gave a statement. Darius flinched at her name. "She's trying to ruin me." Avery paused. "Or she's trying to protect herself. Those two things can look the same when you're guilty." Darius ended the call and stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. He looked like a man who had slept in his clothes, like a man who'd been evicted from his own story. At Horizon Pay, HR called him into a private office. Brent didn't show up, of course. Brent sent a polite email about taking time off to handle personal matters, and that was how corporate America buried you, under professional language and fake concern. Kenny tried to talk him down at a sports bar that afternoon. "You gotta flip this," Kenny said, tapping the table like it was strategy. "PR, image, say it's a misunderstanding." Darius's voice came out rough. "I didn't hit her." Kenny leaned in. "But you wanted to. That's what folks gonna think." Darius slammed his palm on the table, making nearby heads turn. "I did not want to." Kenny raised his hands. "I'm just telling you the optics." Optics. Darius hated that word. He hated how quickly people reduced pain into angles and narratives. That night, Loretta arrived at his apartment with red eyes and a Bible tucked under her arm. She didn't hug him. She looked at him like she was searching for the boy she raised. Tell me it's not true, she whispered. Darius's voice cracked. Ma, I didn't hit her. Loretta's shoulders dropped, but her face stayed tense. That's not what I asked. Darius went quiet. Loretta nodded slowly, like she had just received a diagnosis. Your father used to raise his voice, she said, eyes distant. Then he raised his hand, and every time he said he didn't hit me like that should be enough. Darius's throat tightened. I'm not him. Loretta's gaze sharpened. Then prove it. Don't defend yourself. Fix yourself. Darius wanted to scream that he was fixing it, that he was stressed, that he was trying, that he was under pressure, that he was... But the truth sat heavy in his chest. Simone had begged him to listen long before she begged him to stop. Simone moved into a short-term apartment in Buckhead. High ceilings, clean lines, quiet hallways. She told herself the quiet would feel like peace. Some nights it did. Some nights it felt like grief. Her best friend, Dr. Tiana Brooks, came over with groceries and the kind of support that didn't ask for explanations. Tiana put food in Simone's fridge, poured wine into 2 glasses, and sat beside her on the couch like a guard. You're safe, Tiana said. Simone stared at her hands. I don't feel safe. I feel stupid, like I ignored signs. You didn't ignore them, Tiana replied. You survived them. Simone's eyes burned. He wasn't always like that. Tiana nodded gently. That's why it hurts. The good memories don't disappear. They just fight with the bad ones. Simone's phone buzzed again. Another voicemail from Darius. Another text. Please talk to me. I'm sorry. I'm not that man. She couldn't bring herself to listen. His apologies felt like rain after a house fire. Too late, not enough, and still capable of damage. A week later, Simone walked into a downtown building that wasn't a clinic, wasn't a salon, wasn't a place women went to be comforted. It was a legal office. Not her lawyer's main office. Somewhere smaller, tucked behind a modern lobby with abstract art and security that took their job seriously. Simone signed in with a steady hand, even though her stomach was flipping. A woman at the desk smiled. Ms. Cole, they're ready for you. Simone followed her through glass-walled corridors into a conference room where 2 men and 1 woman waited. They didn't look like the types who enjoyed casual conversation. Ms. Cole, the woman said, I'm sorry you're going through this. We'll handle the protective order and the case prep. Simone nodded, swallowing. I don't want to destroy him. The man with silver at his temples leaned forward. Wanting accountability isn't destruction. It's boundaries with consequences. Simone stared at the folder in front of her. Inside were forms, timelines, statements. Her marriage turned into a legal narrative. As they reviewed details, Simone found herself describing Darius the way strangers would. Voice raised, movements sharp, eyes different when angry. The more she spoke, the more she realized she'd been editing her own life for months, cutting scenes that didn't fit the story she wanted. When the meeting ended, Simone stood to leave. The woman lawyer gave her a reassuring look. You did the right thing coming here. Simone stepped out into the city air, feeling small beneath the skyscrapers. Her phone buzzed again, this time an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Hello? A calm voice replied, Ms. Cole, this is Detective Price. I need to ask you a few more questions. There's additional context we're looking into. Simone's brow furrowed. Additional context? And about what he may not know. Simone's heart skipped. What he may not know? Darius tried to rebuild his image like a man trying to tape cracked glass back together. He signed up for counseling. He stopped drinking. He watched motivational videos at 2 a.m. and wrote in a journal like he could outwrite the part of himself he didn't like. But none of it changed the headlines in people's minds. Even without media coverage, Atlanta's social circles were small. Word traveled through barbershops, brunch tables, group chats, church choirs, and corporate Slack channels. At New Hope Fellowship, Reverend Harlan pulled Darius aside after service. Son, the pastor said, hand heavy on his shoulder, you can't pray your way out of what you refuse to face. I'm facing it, Darius argued. Reverend Harlan's eyes held no judgment, just truth. You're facing the consequences. I want you to face the cause. That night, Darius sat alone in his apartment. Different building now, cheaper rent, less light. He played Simone's last voicemail to him, the one Avery said he should keep. Simone's voice sounded far away, like it was recorded in another life. I loved you, she said softly, but you kept making me feel like love meant shrinking. I'm not shrinking anymore. Darius pressed his thumb against his eye until he saw stars. He wanted to blame Brent, Kenny, stress, money, the pressure to provide, the fear of failing. But deep down, Darius knew why his hand rose, because he needed control, because control had always felt safer than vulnerability, because he didn't know how to ask for help without feeling weak. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Loretta stood in the doorway, holding a plate of food. She stepped inside, looking around the sparse apartment. "You eating?" Darius shrugged. "Not hungry." Loretta set the plate down anyway. "You got court soon." He nodded, eyes down. Loretta's voice softened. "You love her?" Darius's throat tightened. "More than anything." Loretta sighed. "Then stop talking like love is a feeling. Love is behavior." Darius swallowed hard. "Will she ever forgive me?" Loretta stared at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "That depends on whether you want forgiveness or whether you want to be forgiven." Darius didn't understand at first. Loretta added, "One is a trophy. The other is a transformation." He stared at the plate of food, suddenly sick, because he wasn't sure which one he wanted. The next day, Avery called with an update. "We have a hearing. It's moved up." Darius's heart thumped. "Moved up? Why?" Avery hesitated. "Because the court wants to resolve this quickly, and because there's an element to this case that makes it sensitive." Darius frowned. "What element?" Avery exhaled. "I can't explain over the phone. Just be ready. Dress sharp. Be respectful. Don't react." Darius hung up and stared at his suit hanging in the closet, like a uniform for a battle he didn't understand. He still had no idea who would be sitting behind that bench, or why the word judgment was about to become literal. Court day came with winter sunlight and cold air that made Darius's lungs ache. Downtown Atlanta moved like any other morning, people hustling with coffee cups, traffic horn blaring, strangers laughing into phones. The city didn't pause for a man's personal ruin. Inside the courthouse, Avery kept Darius close. "No surprises," she said, though her tight jaw suggested she didn't believe her own words. Darius scanned the hallway and saw Simone at the far end, standing with Tiana and a woman in a gray suit, her attorney. Simone looked smaller than he remembered, not because she had shrunk, but because Darius realized how much space he used to take up around her. Their eyes met. Simone's expression didn't hold hate, it held decision. That hurt more. They entered the courtroom. Darius sat, Simone sat across the aisle. The air between them felt like a locked door. The clerk called the case. The prosecutor stood and spoke with calm authority, laying out the narrative: raised hand, intimidation, fear, past concerns. Detective Price testified, voice steady, describing Simone's statement, the neighbor's call, the patterns they watched for. Darius's chest burned. He wanted to shout, "That's not me." But the problem was, parts of it were. Avery stood and argued for context, for counseling, for no prior record, for a man under pressure who made a terrible choice but did not cause physical harm. Darius watched Simone as he listened. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just listened like a woman who had learned the cost of ignoring herself. Then the courtroom doors opened behind the bench. The judge entered again. Robe dark, posture calm. The bailiff said, "All rise." Everyone stood. Darius stood. The judge took the seat, glanced down at the file, and spoke in a voice that was smooth and measured, a voice trained to carry without shouting. "Be seated." Darius sat, but something felt wrong, like the air had changed temperature. The judge looked up, eyes scanning the room with a quiet intensity. Darius couldn't see the face clearly from his angle. The lighting made the bench area slightly shadowed. He tried to focus on the words instead. The judge spoke about accountability, about safety, about the court's responsibility to protect victims and hold aggressors to the law. Each sentence landed like a brick. Then the judge paused and said, "Before I issue my ruling, I want the defendant to understand something." Darius's stomach dropped. The judge continued, calm as water. "There are consequences you can't bargain with. You can't charm them. You can't outwork them." Darius felt sweat gather under his collar. The judge's gaze fixed, directly on him now, and in that gaze, Darius saw something he recognized. Not the robe, not the authority, the eyes. He froze, because no stranger had ever looked at him like that. Darius's hands went numb. The judge's face was clearer now. The angle shifted, the light caught the features fully, and reality hit him with a force he could feel in his teeth. It was Simone. Not standing at the aisle, not sitting across from him. Behind the bench, In the robe, in the role. Darius's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His brain scrambled for logic like a man drowning grabs for air. Simone, his wife, was the judge? Avery's hand shot to his wrist under the table, gripping hard. A warning, don't you dare. Across the aisle, Simone's attorney didn't react. The prosecutor didn't react. The clerk didn't react. Because everyone else in the room already knew. Darius didn't. Simone's voice stayed even, but something in her tone trembled beneath the surface, like pain disciplined into professionalism. I'll address the obvious, she said, eyes steady on Darius. Yes, I am Judge Simone Cole, and yes, I am also the complainant's spouse. Darius's lungs forgot how to work. Simone continued, the court has reviewed the necessary ethical steps and procedures. I am not presiding over the final disposition of this matter. Today's proceedings are limited in scope, and the official ruling will be assigned to a different judge. A tiny pause. But I requested, Simone added, to make one statement on the record. The courtroom became so quiet, Darius could hear the hum of the lights. Simone looked at him, not like a wife begging to be heard, but like a woman finally allowed to speak without being interrupted. Darius, she said, voice lower now, you didn't know who I was when you raised your hand. You thought love meant you could take your fear out on me. You thought the person who loved you would absorb your worst days like a sponge and still smile. Darius's eyes burned. Simone's gaze didn't waver. But love is not a place to hide violence. Love is not a shield for intimidation. Love is not a permission slip. Her voice cracked, just once, then steadied again. You raised your hand to make me smaller, and in that moment, you showed me you didn't see me as your partner. You saw me as something you could manage. Darius whispered, barely audible, Simone, I'm sorry. Simone blinked slowly. I know you are. The sadness in her voice nearly broke him because it meant she believed him. And still, she continued, sorry doesn't erase what happened. Sorry doesn't undo the fear. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Only change does. She picked up the gavel, eyes still on him. Today you learn what you refused to learn at home. Actions have weight, and weight has consequences. The gavel tapped once. Not angry, not loud, final. And Darius realized the real punishment wasn't the courtroom, the charges, or the career damage. It was the fact that the woman he loved had become the one to teach him, publicly, permanently, what respect should have been all along. Because love, when mistreated, doesn't always leave. Sometimes it stays. Sometimes it rises. Sometimes it returns wearing judgment.